is Joe Seeley. Title of his speech is The Lunacy of the Long Distance Runner. The Lunacy of the Long Distance Runner, Joe Seeley.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, honored guests. Where are your shoes? I get asked that a lot. It's a fair question, and we'll get back to that in a sec. But first off, I just want to say, running is a stupid sport. Long distance running in particular. There's no team, no score, no field, no equipment, and sometimes you suspect, no point. Nevertheless, I fell prey to this peculiar habit when I was 28. Before that, I was a world-class couch potato. Then one day my boss persuaded me to go on a 2-mile run with him. He left me for dead after the first mile. Of course, after that I was hooked. But I soon learned that short distances are not for me. In 5K runs, I was getting dusted by 10-year-olds. That's because short distances require speed and talent, which I lack. Moving up the marathons, I realized that no special skill was involved here. In fact, the only real talent required in long distances is sheer cussedness, the inability to stop when your entire body's screaming at you to give up. So I focused on marathons. Now, marathoners are crazy. I think they all have OCD. They obsess about their pace, their splits, their heart rate, their nutrition, their hydration, you name it. So much so that you wonder whether they have any time left to enjoy the actual experience of running. And big city marathons like LA are a complete zoo. Over 20,000 sick and twisted souls packed together like sardines at Dodger Stadium waiting for the starting gun. So tightly that you crawl the first few miles. And then, just as you're ready to break out of the pack, there's this guy in front of you that won't speed up but won't get out of the way either. And then at the first aid station, he stops to take a drink while you plow into him from behind. It happens every time. My first LA marathon, I was bonked out in Koreatown and just putting along with a fellow sufferer. Just then, we spied this guy with a long gray beard come by. He flies by us with a big old grin. But what really stands out about him is that he isn't wearing any shoes. Here's this gray Adonis running graceful as a gazelle amongst the broken glass and hypodermic needles of downtown LA. And without shoes. I turn to the guy next to me, and we both say, now that's the way to do it. Sure enough, a few years later, I take up barefoot running too. I run a lot of races barefoot, and I got the bruises, cuts, and shards of glass to show for it. The most common question I get is, where are your shoes? To which I invariably reply, I knew I forgot something this morning. I got good at barefoot running, so much so that I ended up on the front page of the sports section of the Santa Barbara Free Press. Or, at least my foot did. So, after a few years of running barefoot marathons, a buddy said to me one day, let's do a trail run. I soon learned that trail run is code for ultramarathons. An ultramarathon is any race that's longer than 26.2 miles and is often run on rocky and hilly terrain. I had no idea what I was getting into with my first ultra, and it completely knocked the snot out of me. When I eventually crossed the finish line, I shouted to no one in particular, I will never, ever do anything like this again. An elderly couple who had hiked the course overheard this and chuckled. They said, it's just like childbirth. A week from now, you'll forget all about the pain and wonder when the next one will be. Unfortunately, they were correct. So I gradually worked my way up from 50-kilometer to 50-mile to 100-mile races. Any idiot can run a marathon. It's true. But it takes a special sort of stupid to run a 100 mile. Admittedly, each of these distances was a big accomplishment. But lest pride puff you up, there are opportunities lurking around every corner of an ultra to be humble. Just a couple months ago, I was running what I considered to be the best ultra of my life. I was rather pleased with myself for having such a strong finish. Then, right before I crossed the finish line, I finally caught up with this young woman who complained, I'm running really slow today, but I did just have a baby 8 weeks ago. Ultra runners are all on their own page. You remember that Sesame Street song that goes, "One of these kids is doing his own thing"? They are all that one kid. I've seen them run wearing bunny ears, leprechaun outfits, even wedding dresses. But perhaps my favorite is the running jester who travels the country running 100-mile races, dressed as a jester, complete with cap, bells, and staff. Just to show I'm not making this all up, here are a few pictures. First, here's the bunny dude. Next, here's Lucky the leprechaun. Finally, here's me with a running jester at the San Diego 100. Not only are long-distance runners a bit crazy to begin with, they often run in crazy conditions. Freezing snow, blinding rain, desert heat soaring well into the hundreds, just to add to the joy of the experience. This all makes you ask, why do people do this? The funny thing is, runners themselves can't tell you. Is it fun? It's been described as type 2 fun that's enjoyable after the fact. You start off a long-distance race filled with high hopes. Then about 3/4 of the way through, this doesn't seem like such a good idea anymore. You're hating life. Something I've actually said at this point. Why couldn't I have taken up cross-stitch instead? Then you're reminded, you told far too many people you're gonna run this thing. And somehow, that gives you the resolve to carry on. Slowly, step by step, things improve. You pick up speed again and finally cross the finish line. Like me, you may shout, "I'll never, ever do this again." But given enough pizza and beer, rest and reflection upon your accomplishment, you'll soon begin to ask, "So, when's the next race?" Crazy, huh? Yeah, all long-distance runners are crazy. Except me, of course. Everybody knows I'm perfectly sane. Mr. Toastmaster.